We had this incident, a CN freight train carrying all kinds of dangerous goods derailed in central Saskatchewan. So let's talk about what might have been the causes, what happened, what might have been the causes. Clinton Marquardt joins us, a human fatigue specialist. He's in Ottawa. Clinton, is it your feeling that fatigue might have been the reason for this incident?
Well, we don't have a lot of details just yet, and I've been trying to track some down more details to try and get a better idea of whether or not the operators in this particular case might have been at risk of fatigue. So there's not quite enough yet to know where we're at. What I would be looking at is trying to understand what the operators' sleep-wake patterns were like before this occurrence, to see if there would have been any number of fatigue risk factors present that would have then set these guys up to be fatigued and have some sort of performance impairment. So
you're looking at, heat wave, did you say?
No, I would be looking at their sleep-wake patterns beforehand. Right.
Wow. You can do that? You can actually monitor sleep wake?
Well, you can do an interview process that will then understand when they were awake and when they were asleep. And depending on that pattern, you can then determine the likelihood that these operators might have been fatigued at the time.
Okay, we're talking about, and we're looking at some pictures right now, Clinton, of, Saskatchewan, flat, and you'd be bored to death. What are the chances that these guys just got bored and did fall asleep?
Well, that's a common sort of misconception out there. Boredom doesn't make you sleepy. What it does is it unmasks fatigue that is already there. So if you are already sleepy and then you are within a monotonous context like this, then there's a chance that fatigue might allow you to fall asleep at that point. But you have to be fatigued to start with.
So when you talk about fatigue, you talk about physical fatigue or long hours of work and those kinds of things?
I'm talking about specifically now sleep-related fatigue. So when I talk about that type of fatigue, I'm talking about essentially it being synonymous with sleepiness. So how sleepy were they?
Clinton, then what is your experience with working with trains? I mean, on one hand, they say you can get on a train and you can fall asleep instantly because of the rocking motion that goes on. So those guys could have had a good night's sleep, but they might not have for exactly the same reason.
Well, in freight rail in Canada, the operators are at slightly higher risk of fatigue because of their erratic work schedules. So what we've seen over and over again is that they're essentially on-call workers, which then makes it hard to predict when they sleep or when to get sleep, which of course can then increase the likelihood that they might have been fatigued at the time.
So erratic sleep patterns, you might in one case get 12 hours, but the next time get 5. How important is the consistency of the 8 hours sleep, if you will?
The human body thrives on this regularity. So you really do want to try and get 8 hours of good quality sleep at approximately the same time every day to maintain your performance at a really high level.
Okay, so it's interesting. My kids gave me a band that I put on my wrist to monitor the number of steps, but I can put it for a night mode, if you will, and it monitors, I guess, motion in the evening. I'm not sure exactly what it, but they talk about deep sleep and not so deep sleep in terms of, is this a real thing to monitor?
Yeah, it definitely is. In total, there's 5 stages of sleep. And what you want to try and do is get enough of the deeper stages. These are referred to as stages 3 and 4. You also want to get enough REM sleep as well. The deeper stages of sleep help with the physiological rebuilding of the body. And REM sleep, what we think in science right now, is that helps with the mental functioning of the body or the cognitive functions. So what you're wearing is called an actigraph. And the way they work is if you're moving, it assumes you are either in lighter sleep or awake. So that's how it monitors how much deep sleep you're getting.
Okay, so how do I get to that deeper sleep? How do I become more effective? Whether I'm driving a train or not, how do I combat fatigue?
Right. So one of the things you really want to do is, again, as you asked, one of the best things to do is to maintain a fairly regular sleep-wake pattern. If you can do that, you're going to have much more what we call efficient sleep, so much more deep sleep, and your deep sleep will be more profound and will help with fatigue. Same thing with REM sleep. You'll get much better REM sleep if your body knows when it's awake or asleep. The other thing you've got to look at is trying to make sure your sleep is occurring at night. It's much better to sleep at night than it is during the day.
Why is that?
Well, we're over thousands, if not millions of years of evolution. Our bodies have been designed to sleep at night, which means if you're sleeping during the day, you're fighting biological markers or biological rules or these thousands of years of evolution. So the sleep you get during the day is normally qualitatively worse than the sleep you get at night.
Does it help, though, to, for instance, I have a friend that swears by wearing one of these masks during the day to block out light to her eyes in that particular case. Does something like that help?
They can help, yeah. So the link there is with a naturally occurring hormone in the brain called melatonin. Melatonin signals to the brain that it's time to sleep. So if you're blocking out the light, what that does is it signals to the brain that it's dark out, it's nighttime, start secreting melatonin, and it's now time to sleep. So it can be effective to block out light and influence your biology that way, yes.
Okay, how many people actually get a good night's sleep by your definition?
Probably not as many as should. If you look back in the early 1900s when the electric light bulb was just introduced, humans were sleeping closer to 8-9 hours. But I challenge you to find somebody nowadays who say they regularly get 8 hours of sleep.
Well, my wife does.
She's a lucky one.
She's few and far between, I think. Okay, and then I guess it's even more stressful when you're driving a train or you're actually working through longer periods of time.
Right, because then that, of course, has, if it is a stressful work period, the stress is then going to have an impact on your sleep as well, especially if it's a chronic stress. So that could mean that even though you get 8 hours of sleep, that sleep might not be qualitatively good enough to fight off fatigue during your next wakefulness period.
Yeah, never mind that, people talk about flying over time zones. These guys are going through time zones on trains, for instance. Does time zone make a difference, if only because of the sleep deprivation?
Well, no, if I go back to this idea that your body thrives on regularity, if you're crossing time zones, whether or not you're called a shift worker or a jet setter, you are disrupting these rhythms within our body called circadian rhythms. You're essentially trying to, and if you're trying to adjust to new time zones and sleep in different time zones, you're essentially trying to tell your body to adjust to a new sleep-wake pattern really quickly. And that can then throw your body off a little bit and increase the likelihood that you might be fatigued.
Wow. Glenn, we'll find out more about this particular train derailment, but thank you. I never knew there was so much to know about sleep. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Mark Art joins us. He's a human fatigue specialist, and he's based in Ottawa. We're going to take a quick break and come right back.